Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I have to give all praise and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem HaKadosh. Yahweh being true and calls God, Ba'ashem his name, and Yahushai being true and Savior and calls Jesus. And HaKadosh means Holy Spirit. Double honors, apostles, and elders of great known that rule well and worthy double honors. And peace and blessings you all select out there, pushing the work of the Lord in true faith and sincerity, promote your bodies as a living sacrifice. Shalom, Paul as well. This is your brother Mashal. Today's supplication exhortation in this lesson, we'll be basically going over how every Batman needs an Alfred. Every Batman needs an Alfred. What that basically means is that us being like spiritual Batman or just in general, every superhero, ultimately needs that person in their circle, that one person that they can trust, that can basically be, their backbone, so to speak, man. Because, life as a superhero fighting crime, you really can't trust anybody. You know what I'm saying? Most of the time the world's against you, and sometimes you may be at peace with people, but if you show them who you truly are, they will ultimately, turn against you. So you ultimately need that person, to be in your circle that's going to, be there for you, man, when you need it the most. That actually, understands you, man, who you are, behind the mask, you know, because a lot of times people only understand one part of somebody, man. But you need somebody that understands the both sides of you, man, the mask and who you are behind the mask, man. So if you notice great superheroes, man, they always have that, counselor, so to speak, that mentor, that person that teaches them the ropes, not only teaching them the ropes, but provides, emotional, you know, stability, and grounding, man. You know, you see Alfred, Batman, he has Alfred, his butler, to watch over him, and help him, man, because, it's hard, man. It's only so much you can do by yourself, and you have to understand that we're never really alone in this thing. You can't do this alone, man. You cannot do this alone. There was no prophet of old, that just did it completely by themselves. There was always someone there, or at least the spirit. Sometimes the spirit, can be your Alfred, so to speak, man. You know what I'm saying? Spider-Man, he had, Dr. Kirk Connors, as his mentor, person to have his back, you know. He had Aunt May, A lot of superheroes, man, even, celebrities, athletes and people in the world, they have a thing called an agent, Everybody needs that agent, so to speak, man, to keep you in order because, sometimes we can think we're doing the right thing, and we lose self-awareness, man. So it's important to have that person that's able to see us, from the outside and tell us from what's right and what's wrong and what we need to improve on because, as humans, man, we have human tendency to think that everything we do is perfect, man, but that overconfidence. So you do need that person to be in your circle to humble you, man, and like I mentioned earlier, man, the first part, man, and the reason why, it's important to have that Alfred, that person in your circle, man, is because, they provide, that emotional stability, man, because, and grounds you, man, because, this life, man, especially as, a superhero, man, like life, can get overwhelming. Especially, man, when you're constantly, pushing yourself, and facing difficult challenges, man, that Alfred, so to speak, that person in your circle will keep you grounded, man. They're going to remind you of your values, of your purpose, and ultimately your humanity, man, and, that basically means, you don't, risk losing yourself in the mission, because a lot of times, a lot of people, even soldiers sometimes, man, can actually lose, a sense of who they are and become a monster. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that Alfred man keeps us sane, man. You know, it keeps us sane because, especially in this thing, being a superhero, we're spiritually fighting crime. You know what I'm saying? So when it gets tough, when it starts to come to the people that's close to us, man. You know what I'm saying? When the enemy attacks your heart, sometimes you're gonna want to, crash out. You know what I'm saying? And get revenge and become a monster, but you can't. Because that will, ruin you, man. So you need that person to keep you balanced, man, and remind you not to lose yourself in the mission. You know. Ultimately, man, Batman fights the crime, but Alfred, keeps, the Bruce Wayne alive, the human part, because at the end of the day, we're humans still at the end of the day, man. We're not perfect. So we still got to keep that humanity in us, man, to keep us balanced, man. That's why superheroes have alter egos, to have that balance, to keep them sane, because once you lean too much on one side or the other, that's when you completely, fall off, man. You know, and ultimately too, um, that Alfred man, is gonna give you that unfiltered, honesty, man. You know, they're gonna tell you the truth no matter what you hear, man. They're not gonna sugarcoat it, man. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people in this world, they sugarcoat a lot of things, man, and stay silent. You know what I'm saying? You know, but a person, who speaks up with honesty, man, even when it hurts, that rebuke, the scriptures say, man, open rebuke is better than secret love. You know what I'm saying? That person who speaks with honesty and love is priceless, man. You know, and we also got to consider, the loyal support, man, even without the spotlight. Sometimes people only help you when it benefits them or when it's visible, man. A lot of people want to, be looked at as a hero, but when you have that Alfred, on your side, man, when there's no one watching, they'll help you even when no one's watching, when you're at your lowest. They're quiet, loyal, they don't need recognition to be with you, man, be there for you, man, and they remind you too, man, that you're not alone because, when you're independent, a lot of this thing, man, we're soldiers, man, the word soldier comes to the word, solitaire, which means solitary. So we're gonna be alone most of the time. We're gonna be independent, but even the most, independent, strong-willed people, man, carry the most burdens, man, that we don't typically share, man. So having that Alfred, in your circle, in this walk, is someone who's not gonna let you, carry, all these burdens alone. So that's why it's important to be around brothers, or be around at least one person, that's gonna, take that weight off your back, and remind you that you're not alone, Even if it's connecting with a brother through online, you need, because we're here to comfort one another with the scriptures, man. That's what the scriptures say, man, you know? It's like that silent, reassurance, man, that you're not alone, And they're gonna encourage you, man, without pressure, you know? They're gonna believe in you, when you're doubting yourself, and they're ultimately gonna, push you without force, but with faith. They see, who you ultimately can be, man. They have a vision. You gotta have visionaries around you, man. You know? But at the end of the day, people will think, oh, like only the independent ones, make it and stuff like that. But, and a lot of people think, having someone by your side, helping you is a weakness, but it's not, man. It's you got to be a strong enough person to accept the connection because at the end of the day, no one makes it through life without needing someone. If you could do anything, in life and be successful at any craft, but you need someone in your circle, man, someone in your circle that at least believe in you. You know what I'm saying? To see who you really are, man. Because no one has done it by themselves, man. You know, even Yahushua didn't do it by himself. He still had, people, in his circle to help him, You know what I'm saying? Some people he could vent to, you know what I'm saying? Stuff like that, you know? He had his disciples with him. You know, when he was in the temple when he was young, he was taking notes. Yeah, I wish I was taking notes. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, no one does it alone, man. You know? And, you know, it's usually that, you know, one quiet, you know, loyal person, you know, who makes the difference, man, between breaking and enduring, man. You know, that one loyal person, man, can help you, you know, go from, you know, you being at a breaking point and almost giving up to giving you that extra motivation. You know what I'm saying? That give you that aha moment. You know what I'm saying? That flash bulb, you know, moment, like, you know, like boom, oh shoot, you're actually right. To allow you to endure and not fall off, man. You know? So you need that person around you, man. You know? But now let's go into the scriptures. Let's go to the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 6, and verse 6. This book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 6, and verse 6, and it reads, Be in peace with many. You know, so the scriptures tell us to be in peace with many. You know what I'm saying? If it be possible, be at peace with all men. You know what I'm saying? But nevertheless, have but one counselor of 1,000, man. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, yeah, you're going to be at peace with a lot of people. Yeah, you're going to know a lot of people. You may even be popular, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? You know? But at the end of the day, you're supposed to have one counselor, at least have a one counselor, you know, among 1,000, man. So even though, you know, all these people, you're at peace with a lot of people, you know, you need that, at least that one person, you know, in your circle, you know what I'm saying, that's basically going to be like your counselor, man. You know, like in school, you know what I'm saying, you know, you would always have a guidance counselor, man. You know, that's kind of like your agent, man, academically. So everybody needs that agent, so to speak, man. You know, yeah, you know a lot of people, you cool with a lot of brothers and stuff, but you need that one brother, you know, in your circle that's gonna keep you level headed, you know, because not everybody's gonna understand you like that brother does, man. So you need that one person that truly understands you, man. You know, you know. And now let's actually go into the definition. You know, let's go into etymology of the word counselor, man. The word counselor. The word counselor in the etymology is derived from the Old French word conseiller, meaning to advise. You know, so you know, a person is gonna advise you, man. They're gonna help you. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna guide you. They're gonna put you in the right direction. You know, a counselor is gonna advise you and put you in the right direction. It is ultimately derived from the Latin word um, conciliare, conciliare, meaning to deliberate. You know, deliberate. You know, so now let's actually go into the word um, deliberate or deliberate. So the word deliberate means it has three definitions. Deliberate. The first definition is done consciously and intentionally. Intentionally. You know, so when someone's being deliberate, that's literally what a counselor does. When a counselor is being deliberate, they're gonna intentionally, you know, tell you, you know what I'm saying, you know, the truth, man. You know, they're gonna make sure they fully consider, you know what I'm saying, the thing at hand. You know, they're gonna take their time and they're gonna, you know, which allows them to fully give you the 100% truth that you need, you know. So you need that like mentor, you know what I'm saying, so to speak, you know, to advise you, that has the experience, you know, that has gone through certain life experiences and stuff like that, and is gonna be willing to keep you level headed, man. You know. So you know, literally, the word counselor, you know, also means to be deliberate. So, you know, a true counselor, man, is gonna intentionally tell you stuff, man. They're not gonna, you know, try to subtly tell you things. Nah, they're gonna give you the straight skinny. They're gonna give you the 100% truth, man, whether you like it or not, man. You know what I'm saying? You know, they're gonna make sure, you know what I'm saying, they study the situation, you know what I'm saying, so they can, you know, give you what you need, man, to allow you to analyze the truth, so you can understand it completely, man. You know, man. So it's crazy, man. That the word counselor literally means to be deliberate, man. So you need that person around you to tell you the truth, man. When when sometimes we can, like, when we're so locked in, into something, man, we can have like tunnel vision, what I'm saying? And we ultimately lose sight, what I'm saying, of who we are, or, what I'm saying, the goal at hand, or why we're in this thing. What I'm saying? Sometimes you can be so focused, so locked in that you forget the reason why. What I'm saying? The reason why you became Batman, the reason why you became Spider-Man. What I'm saying? The reason, why you became a man of the Lord. So you need that person to deliberately tell you the truth, man. You know what I'm saying? And advise you and guide you in the right direction, man. So everybody needs that person in their circle, man. Yeah, you can be independent the most time, but you need that person, man. You need that person in your circle, man. You know, the scriptures literally tell you that, man. You can't do this alone. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes, the Lord will put it. It can even be somebody you least expect. You know what I'm saying? That the Lord might set up, man, to basically be your mentor, so to speak, and be your backbone, man. Someone who you can rely on, man. Sometimes Batman is not always perfect. Sometimes, Batman is human at the end of the day. He gets injured. You know what I'm saying? He gets all these things happen to him, so he needs that person, what I'm saying, to have his back, man. Because there's only so much you can do in this flesh. You know, man, even Superman has the robot from Krypton, what I'm saying, that gives him advice, what I'm saying, that's his, you know, counselor, so to speak, man. So if Superman has a counselor, if Batman has a counselor, if all these superheroes who do the right thing, the righteous thing, have one, why don't you have one, man? So sometimes you got to get rid of that ego, man. That ego where you think you can do it all by yourself. No, man. But most importantly, the spirit, what I'm saying, is, our main counselor. But you do need that physical, counselor, man, that's going to put you in the right direction. That knows what's best for you, man. That's going to tell you the truth, when everybody else is sugarcoating it, man. That's going to, allow you to keep focused, man, even when times get hard. And ultimately, have you in touch with humanity, man, because, that's what allows us to be balanced, man. Balancing, the alter ego, man, the cape, and also the human side of us, man, the vigilante side of us, but also, the human side of us, man, So we need that person around us to keep us balanced, man, because I'm telling you, if we let this, if we let the mask, so to speak, take over us completely, we no longer have that balance. What I'm saying? That's when you fall out the truth. You become over righteous. You burn yourself out, man. What I'm saying? And we all know that, a false balance is abomination to the Lord. What I'm saying? So you need, obviously, that's crazy that I said that. A lot of times, like I said earlier, you can get so locked into the mission, and now you become over righteous. Now you're trying to do too much, man. Now you're trying to do too much of the right thing. And we got to remember, even something that's good for you, if done too much, can turn into something bad, man. So you need that person that's going to ultimately mediate you, man. Not only just be a mediator, not only do you need a mediator, what I'm saying, it could be conflict between two people, but also you need a mediator for your inner conflict, because we all have an inner conflict, man. We are our biggest enemy. We're constantly fighting ourselves every day. So you need that person that's gonna, be that mediator for, the Batman side of you, and also the Bruce Wayne side of you, man. So just think about that, man. Remember, a player is nothing without the coach. You need that person, what I'm saying, to tell you, what I'm saying, and, what to do, man. Because when you're on the court, when you're playing, you're not going to be consciously aware of all your movements and stuff, man. Because you're in the moment. But the people from the outside are gonna tell you, man, and you gotta be humble enough to accept that, man. You know what I'm saying? You gotta be humble enough, you know what I'm saying, to accept, criticism, man. Even when it hurts. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, we have to remember that open rebuke is better than secret love, man. Rebuke is a beautiful thing, man. Remember that when someone truly loves you, man, they're gonna chastise you, man. You know what I'm saying? So, and tell you the truth. But we have to also remember, even if it hurts, that growth only comes through pain. So in order for something to really grow, it has to go through that pain. It has to be tried to be purified, man. You know. So with that, Lord, if I had to give all praise, honor, and glory to you, how about Shemel Shai? Bashim Kakadash, man. Be at peace with many, but have a counselor among 1,000, man. So have that person in your circle, man. Have that Alfred, that's gonna keep you balanced, man. Have that spiritual agent, that that manager, all these celebrities have a manager, and stuff like that, man. You gotta have that person to where it's you guys against the world, man. You gotta have that person around you that truly understands you, man. It may take time, but be open minded, man, and trust the spirit, man. You know? So, with that, Lord, if I, man, keep the faith, blah, 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 death to America.